Hello friends, my name is Haley and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you my January reading wrap up, and I feel like I might disappoint some people because I had some unpopular opinions on some very popular books. But let's get into it and you'll see what I'm talking about. First off, I read Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, the sequel to Six of Crows, the duology. I love Six of Crows, alright? That was like one of my favorite books that I read in 2017. I was surprised by how good it was. Like, the premise didn't grab me, but I thought I would just give it a try anyway, and I was super pleased with it. I fell in love immediately with Leigh Bardugo's writing. I thought it was great. This book was seriously the most disappointing book I've ever read. And if you liked it, I'm actually pretty jealous of you because I wanted to love it so much. So my problem lies in the story. And now, yes, Six of Crows, it's more character driven, but it does have a very simple, basic story. And when you have a story from 6 different perspectives, I think making it very simple and straightforward is a really smart thing to do, because then you can really focus on the characters, but there's still something that you're following. So I thought it worked very well for Six of Crows. In this book, I was like, what is the story for half of it? Like, the beginning, they have kind of a little bit of a plot of what they're trying to, like, I know what they're trying to accomplish, and if you read the book, you know at the beginning, they're trying to accomplish something. I don't want to say because I don't want to have any spoilers. Try to accomplish something, they accomplish it, and then for like a third, I don't know how much, a quarter, a third of the book, I have no idea what they're trying to do. And I know that there's some gears spinning in Kaz's head, but it really isn't clear. Like, we're just gonna do this and this and this, but I don't know what they're trying to work towards. And I even know what the overall arc is that they're trying to get to, but their little side goals on the way don't make any sense until it's revealed. And I really hate that device where authors withhold information from the reader just to get a shock response. And that was especially apparent at the ending. That was done, and it really disappointed me because I was like, anytime something like that happens, I'm like, why wouldn't the characters have been explaining this in their thoughts? The other thing is, as I said, they're very much about exploring the characters. And it worked very well with Six of Crows because we didn't know these characters. We get all this wonderfully written background through flashbacks, and it's great. You slowly reveal a little bit more of the characters and you really start to get to know them. And I think it was brilliantly done. In this one, we already know the characters, so the flashbacks don't serve any sort of purpose. There's not a purpose for character development because, like I said, we already know. It just kind of builds on what we already know, and there's no new information, and it also doesn't push the story forward in any way. So I kept getting through these characters' perspectives going, what did I just get out of that? Like, the present is fine, like, they're still moving forward, even though I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but these flashbacks aren't telling me any new information. This, like, Six of Crows I flew through. This book I started in December, and it probably took me about a month because I had to force myself to get through it. On a positive note, I will say the best part of this book was by far Nina's story, in my opinion. Nina's my favorite character, so it was at least satisfying to get a really interesting arc from her in a couple of different parts of her life. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but her development was fantastic, very well done. Everybody else, I didn't really feel like they were, well, I would say that I guess Jesper and Wylan were also developed pretty well. Their stories still progressed a bit, but they just weren't as interesting. So unfortunately, I could only give this book 2.75 stars. Again, if you liked it, that's great. I'm honestly really jealous that you did like it so much. I haven't lost faith in Leigh Bardugo. I still want to read the Grisha trilogy and, of course, the Wonder Woman book. So still going to move forward with her. Hopefully Grisha trilogy is good and consistent and wraps up nicely for me. And then, in preparation for the forthcoming film Love, Simon, I listened to Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda. It was a cute book. I didn't like it as much as The Upside of Unrequited, which I really didn't see coming. I guess I should have, because I actually, even though I gave it 4 stars, I feel very fond of that book. Like, I reflect on it every once in a while, and I'm like, that was a very satisfying and adorable book. And Simon, I felt the hype that everybody's been giving it just didn't quite resonate with me. And the real big issue I had with it was the characters. I thought, like, Simon's dialogue and his inner monologue, all of that was written very well, but I just didn't think anybody really had any sort of personality. Like, you only really see any sort of personality from Simon when he's writing emails to Blue, and even then, they're mostly just talking to each other. You know what I mean? Like, they're just having a conversation. They're not really like, did you see this band? Oh, that's the only thing that he has. That's the only interest he has is music. But, like, he's not talking really about movies, maybe briefly, but there's not, like, I like anime, or if he does, he brings it up briefly, and then it's never mentioned again. And I just really wanted him to have interests, and the only thing that he really had going for him was this play that happens to be going on at the same time, and the play felt like a device from the author to make it seem like Simon had something to do other than just corresponding with this guy. It's not just Simon either. All of the background characters. I didn't care for Leah, because who is she? Abby she probably had the most personality to me. She was probably my favorite character. But even still, I felt she could have been developed a lot better as well. Nick was just kind of a guy in the background who was there. He's supposed to be one of Simon's oldest friends. Like, I just didn't see it. And then at the end, there's a reveal that some of the characters have been in a band, and I'm like, why isn't music more relevant? Like, other than, Simon just really liking Elliott Smith and really depressing 80s and 90s music. But I still thought it was cute. I thought the story was laid out very well, and it developed nicely. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. Like I said, it didn't quite live up to The Upside of Unrequited for me. The next book that I read was The Cruel Prince, and I really had a struggle trying to decide what to rate it. Like, as I was reading the book, usually I can kind of tell this is probably going to be like a 4-star read, this is more like a 5, this one, oh, that's a 2. But this one, I don't know, so I'll give you the breakdown of where the struggle is. If you're not familiar with the story of The Cruel Prince, it's about this girl who is a human, and she gets a knock on the door, and it's this mysterious man who kills her parents, and it turns out he was her mother's first husband, and her older sister was actually his child. So he takes the 3 girls, the daughters, into the fairy world, and they're raised in this world, and that's the only world that they ever know. And then our main character, Jude, ends up having this rivalry with Cardan, the Cruel Prince, and she ends up finding herself with an opportunity to gain some power. So the book got off to a fantastic start. It had really good world building. I love the world building. I like that she incorporated all sorts of fairies. Like, there's goblins, and I think there's gnomes, and almost every myth related to fairies from whatever culture, brownies, they all come into play, and I thought that was great just to see them all commingling in one world. I like the contrast between fairies and humans, also very well done. The concept itself is very fascinating and works well in the book, just that there is this mortal girl who has to go live in the fairy realm with the man who killed her parents and be raised by him like he's her father. Fantastic, so compelling, and I really like that the fairies are very cruel, and especially don't treat Jude, our main character, very well, because she's mortal and they resent her for that. My first issue came from the writing style. In general, I don't like present tense. I dealt with it as best I could. I thought Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda was also present tense, and that didn't bother me as much. This one, I think it was also because she didn't use contractions, and her use and not use of contractions was confusing, because, like, in quotes, whenever a character spoke, they would use contractions, but Jude's narration she didn't use contractions, so it threw me off, and just the contractions feel so formal, especially for a YA book. It didn't feel like it fit. Okay, so it's called The Cruel Prince, And there was so much hype, and it wasn't even just from the booktube community, it was everywhere. It was this, obviously this cover's different, it's from my Outcrate, and the interview with Holly Black really hypes up just how mean and terrible the fairies are. So I was like, wow, this is gonna be a really dark book. And by comparison to what had been built up, it was very watered down, and I just wanted something darker than what I got. It's called The Cruel Prince, and the Cruel Prince himself, Cardan, wasn't that bad. Like, I'm gonna say something that's a minor spoiler. If you're really concerned about it, I'm gonna have a picture in the corner, so I'll put that down now. So we get Cardan, his first appearance. He rips the wings off of a character in the court. That's his first appearance. I'm like, wow, okay, that's a really good introduction to this evil, villainous character that we're gonna get. And then the next thing that he does that's evil is he kicks dirt in Jude's food. Is that really the best you can do, is kick dirt in her food? It felt like a schoolyard bully. Like, we started off with Joffrey Baratheon, and then we get to, like, a 5-year-old. I didn't get this vibe that he was as evil as he should be. Pretty early on into the story, Cardan becomes a bit of a sympathetic character. So I was like, why even call it The Cruel Prince if we're gonna start feeling sympathy and caring for this guy, and he's kind of like a nice guy. And he's not really a nice guy, but you know, I mean, by comparison to what is built up, he's kind of just a nice guy. I had another issue with Jude's character, and I think this is more that her characterization is a victim of how short the book is. I think if it was longer and she was able to be fleshed out a little bit more, I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with her. So there's a point where she starts to become very power hungry, and I felt like there just wasn't quite enough hinting at that, or enough evolution of how much power she wants. It's there, but I really felt like it could have been developed better, and it would have made more sense for her to become much more concerned about how much power she had in this world. So I just felt like everything was watered down and a bit weaker than it should have been. I will say that the ending was very intriguing, and it really had me turning the pages for the last, like, quarter of the book, and that was enough to get me interested in continuing with the series. We'll see in book 2 whether I decide I want to keep going, or is it just a duology? It might just be a duology. I'm still struggling with exactly what kind of rating I want to give it, because like I said, there were some things I liked. It's somewhere between a 2.5 and a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I also read Dark Force Rising by Timothy Zahn, which is part 2 in the Thrawn trilogy. I read part 1 last month, and I really liked that book. This book, it was well written. It was just kind of, you know, a middle story trying to get the characters from where we started and leading them to where the story's gonna go. And for me personally, that was really the weak part of the story. If you don't know, it's a non-canon Star Wars book, and really it just kind of continues from the Thrawn book. So again, I don't really want to say anything because it really does depend on the synopsis of the first book to explain what's going on in this story. So overall, my feelings on it was that it was just too much politics. And I like Star Wars with meaningful stories, and I don't need it to be all lightsaber fights and blasters, but the politics were just kind of boring for me. I needed a little bit. I think the big issue that I had was that all of our main characters, so Leia, Han, and Luke, were separated for most of the book, and I really like how they all play off of each other. So I just missed hearing them together. Leia was on this diplomatic mission, and she was with Chewbacca, but, you know, he can't speak English, so there's only so much you can get from that. But I'm very hopeful that in part 3, we'll get a lot more Thrawn, a lot more conflict, because this is going to be where everything's built up to, and all of our characters are going to clash and meet up. So I'm excited for the next one. I think I'll like it more. I only gave this book 3 stars, which is still decent, but not my favorite. Hopefully, like I said, next book will be much better. So that's going to be it for my January wrap-up. I'm sorry if I didn't like some of your favorite books. I know it was a very unpopular opinion video. But if you did manage to stick it all the way through this video, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe and hit that like button because that really helps me a lot. So I will see you guys soon with a new video.